This Black History Month, we're learning more about the stories of African American women who helped shape Tulsa's Greenwood district into the iconic Black Wall Street. And joining us this afternoon is Dr. Brandy Wells, a professor of African American history over at OSU. Dr. Wells, thanks so much for joining us at 4. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Shannon.
So I know you worked on a project which tells the stories of 10 stories of black women who lived and worked in the Greenwood area. What more can you tell us about that project?
Absolutely. So in 2019, I conceived this project. I was working on it on my own, just sort of reading all of the secondary literature, getting into the primary sources. And I decided to teach a course on digital methods in history and to focus that course on the Tulsa Race Massacre. And so I'm working with students in that course. I invited them to come on board to work with me on this project on Black women in Greenwood, and they were excited to do so. And we had a really good time. We wrote 10 biographies, we wrote background essays to provide historical context for the Tulsa Race Massacre, but also African American history in Oklahoma. And we did a lot of maps, and it was just a lot of fun.
And during your research, did anything in particular stand out to you? It sounds like there's a lot of stuff, but just one thing that really impressed you.
In my research that really impressed me, I would say it's the resiliency of these women. And so in those 10 biographies, we were able to discover that a lot of these women came from places like Alabama and Texas, and they came through a lot to arrive in Oklahoma. And sometimes when they arrived in Oklahoma, they would live in another place before they arrived here in Greenwood. And just seeing their life stories and everything that they went through to get those businesses off the ground, because that's what we study, are Black women entrepreneurs in Greenwood, and just the resiliency that their life stories capture.
And let's talk about after the Tulsa Race Massacre, mostly what happened. How did these women help rebuild Greenwood?
Yeah, so in a lot of different ways. And so we can talk about some of the women here who helped to gather food supplies, who helped to clear the ash. Some women, or one in particular, traveled to New York to gather clothing and money to bring back for Black Greenwood members. Then also through churches and through social organizations and civic organizations, they did a lot of fundraising in order to rebuild Greenwood brick by brick. So anywhere that there was a rebuilding project, you can believe that Black women in Greenwood were involved.
I want to talk about you for a second. You moved here to Tulsa back in 2018, so right around the centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Have you learned anything since moving to Tulsa about this very historic event?
Absolutely. So I knew about the Tulsa Race Massacre before coming to Tulsa by virtue of being a historian and being a historian of the African American experience. But being here on the ground in Tulsa, in Oklahoma, afforded me a sort of look into local conversations. And I realized just how much this history was alive and how much it meant to the people of Greenwood. And I got to hear a lot of those very interesting conversations that were happening here in Tulsa. And so it was a real opportunity, and I'm glad that I was here in the state.
We're happy to have you too. Dr. Brandie Wells, thanks so much for your time again this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.